our lesson is about the Sabbath, and it's all positive. Okay, it went at lengths to cover all the good things that Sabbath brings. Okay, and on the way to church this morning, and we're going to all answer my questions and such. I don't have a monologue, but on the way to church this morning, we have it on one of those Christian stations, okay? And you got your flavor Christian stations. Sometimes you wonder if there's any God in this song that they're doing. But there is if you listen. But they go to the disc jockey, and the disc jockey comments that it's Memorial Weekend, and they do what I've heard a lot of, not disc jockeys, but anybody, when they reference, Veterans Day, Memorial Weekend, 4th of July, Christmas, Easter, you go through them all. Never Groundhog's Day, because this is what they say. What is the real meaning? How are you going to do this Memorial Day? This 3 days, is there going to be any Memorial Day in it? You could see that they don't do that with groundhogs. So the thing is what would you do? Your 3 days. Well, not 3, it's Monday. Monday's Memorial Day. And so I have 2 kids. One kid said, "So, did you celebrate your Memorial Day when you were a kid, Dad?" And okay, so what I'm talking about is the Sabbath here, okay? We're going to talk about this. And there's a lot of stuff that they brought up that's positive about, what could happen on Sabbath, okay? And there's 5 days of this material, 4 days. And so I'm comparing it to Memorial Day, which is only once a year. Sabbath is once a week. So they asked me, did you, according to this jockey, did you just do barbecue wieners or something? Or did you actually do a real Memorial Day? And so the one that was asking me that question was being sarcastic. So did you? They're from school. And teachers are always telling them, you need to do this or you need to do it right. So that was what the point being. Are you doing it right? When you were a kid, did you do your Memorial Day right? Okay. What? I heard someone say something. What's right? Okay, and now we're going to talk about the Sabbath. I got a lot of time to talk. Or you do too. So I'm going to ask you before we get into, I'm not going to ask you if you did your Sabbath right. That's the nice thing about this lesson. They talk about all the positive effects of going to, or I call it going to church once a week. I like saying it that way, even though you could live somewhere and there's no church. So I get it. But you'll hear me up front reference Sabbath as, going to church once a week. Okay? But back to Memorial Day. This man right here, according to online people, said, what is right with Memorial Day? What's doing it right? So I'm going to ask you. I had to answer this question. What was doing it right? Well, you got to know what's doing it right. I didn't defend myself because there was no defense. Because was there any aspect of Memorial Day that, in my mind, I did right? Any part of it? Okay, now used to be. Now I was telling them that maybe not so much veterans. I thought that when I was younger, it was more about the people who have come and gone in your family. And I felt that Veterans Day was in the fall. And I said that I just thought recently they kind of merged. It seems like they've pulled more Veterans Day kind of into Memorial Day. But I could be wrong. Was it a huge incentive for? Okay. And that's the way I would say that when I was a kid. And I went through it real quick. I said there's a lot of little towns out there that don't have perpetual care in the cemeteries. So in the spring, when the grass is about, and it just turned out they picked it right, at least for South Dakota, is that, you go to the cemetery and you whack that down and you're probably good for the summer. Possibly. In South Dakota, it doesn't rain too much, so whatever you did on Memorial Day, it kind of kept it clean. You didn't have perpetual care in a lot of these little cemeteries, so I went with my grandfather. Okay. Okay, and so what was said according to online is Memorial Day was honoring those that had served and died in the service, whereas Veterans Day is to honor those that are alive. Okay. So going to the cemetery when I was a kid, I was telling, I know we're going to get in the Sabbath, but I said to do it right, you were supposed to, I guess, get your work done so that the cemetery looked good by Sunday or by Monday. I don't remember, but I think my grandfather went on a Friday or a Saturday. Now, talking about keeping the Sabbath, I remember as a kid, I knew I went down there with Grandpa, how much work were we going to do? What was the point of it? Is this going to be a work day? Well, I think I went down there on Saturday, but I might have went on Friday. But you never went on Sunday because most people, that was their Sabbath, and so they didn't. But I think the object was not to get the cemetery cleaned up by Sunday. I think the object is to have it done by Monday. I think that was what was going on. And in today's world, and we're talking about Sabbath, the Sunday keepers, I don't think anybody cares anymore. There's not a, let's get it done, there's an object here. If you're going to do it, if you're going to at least do it, don't do it on Monday because it should be done by Monday. But, so, did I keep Memorial Day, according to what this young student was asking me, did I do it right? I guess that's what was done. What else happened during I said that at best, and we're going to talk about the Sabbath today, and I'm going to use the words at best. Could something good come from what happened? At best. Now, when we get into there's a lot of wow stuff in here. There's a lot of good things that can happen on Sabbath. I don't think I could get it all done in one day. But maybe in a lifetime, I could. But as far as that Memorial Day was, this is at best. I said that my grandfather would say, that's my dad, that's my mom, and he'd say, that's my uncle that I was named after. And I said, he didn't go into an oratory about how his mom made the best bread. No, he just said at best, that's my mom and dad, that would be your great-grandpa, and this one over here was my uncle, and they named me after him. At best. No, and as a student, I said, my student, which was my daughter, she just laughed. Oh, he didn't. I said, no. You see, they get that from the teachers. I said, no huge oratory. He said it about as fast as I said it. That's the way it is. And he, in a way of saying it, well, it's respect. Do you get what I'm saying? It's respect. They were somebody. They're here. It's respect. There might have been times that as a family or whatever, you might have fought, had problems, but here it is. These are the people. Chances are they're good, and sometimes they were like me, grouchy or something. But anyway, so that was Memorial Day. Okay, talking about the Sabbath, the covenant sign of if anybody read any of this, it's a highly technical lesson here because you have the Sabbath being offered to a group of people as a covenant. But they've put this under a microscope. It's fair. It's fair to do that. But when we're talking about the Sabbath, they're talking about that when God did this, he did it with Moses and those people, and when they're fleeing the Egyptians. But the Sabbath existed way before that. And that's kind of a nice thing, because when you talk to, and hey, I'm answering a question that's in here. What's your thoughts about, oh yeah, if someone were to, this is on Sunday, if someone were to ask you, how has keeping the Sabbath benefited your relationship with the Lord, how would you respond? Okay? That's an open question about the positive effects. But if somebody come up to me and said, does it matter? That was in the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments have no issue in the New Testament. And the nice thing is what, I felt I knew my Bible pretty good, is that it was there before there was the Ten Commandments. It was just that simple. And it came from where? Creation. Just right there. Now, it brought up in this lesson that they said that when it was in creation, and I never thought about it because I'm not going to mince words, but in creation, they never called it the Sabbath. They never did. And now if somebody, I'm playing devil's advocate here, if somebody come over to me and said, there, Kibben, I didn't introduce myself. I should have. My name's Kibben Rittberger. Somebody come over and say, Kibben, there you go. It's not even called the Sabbath in creation. So whatever that is, not what's going on in the Ten Commandments about keep Sabbath holy. And I would say, really, it's the same thing. And there's nobody in this room could sit here. That would be a hard point to argue, is that when God created and rested on the seventh day, that somebody would essentially say that that's not a Sabbath. Of course it is. Now, for the lesson, though, they bring up the point. God was doing that before he started talking covenant. That's the point that's brought up here. And that you need to know that, because if you want to say in this lesson that it's a covenant even for end times people that are Christians, well, God was doing it before it was a covenant. And that's important. But it doesn't mean that you can't still look at the fact that it's a covenant for end time Christians, or it matters to God. I mean, that's real. But to say that it was from the beginning of time, well, it wasn't a covenant, because there was no covenant with no people. It was Adam and Eve. So that was what was brought up in the lesson. I thought was interesting, because I wondered what the author of the lesson was talking about. What do you mean it wasn't a Sabbath at creation? Of course it was, but the word wasn't used. So now I could read, covenant sign. This is on Saturday. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. Here, on Saturday, they mentioned, I'm not going to read this, but they mentioned that once a week it comes around. Once a week. Every week. It's going to until you die. Once a week. Side note here. I have, and I hope you know, I never run anybody down. I try to understand what other people do. I was thinking the other day, the COVID going on, pandemic. We didn't do communion, but we had communion for a while, but we had communion last week. What, Seventh-day Adventist Church, is that 3 months or 4 months? 3. Is it 3? It's a quarter. Okay. And I was trying to do that, thinking in my mind. And so every 3 months communion comes around. Well, you see where I'm doing the numbers game here. Sabbath comes around every week. Okay? Not that communion has anything to do with Sabbath, but the fact is that as a Christian, it's a numbers game. It's a math game. It is. It's a memorial. But yeah, it shouldn't be a numbers game, but I'm just saying on Saturday, they brought the point up is that, given your week, your schedule, the word week is that Sabbath comes around. And in a given year, it comes around so many times. But again, okay, so communion's 3 months. If you're a Catholic, I've never asked my friend, do you do communion every time you go to church? Or at least once a week? It's called sacrament or a different word. Am I right? Is it every time? Depends on the person. But in a given normal schedule, once a week, the sacrament. Am I right or wrong? Right? Once a week. Okay. Now, hey, I'm not sitting up here talking about the right or right. One thing about I know in the new, do it as often as you want. Okay? That's fair. But I'm not here to talk about communion, but I'm talking about a numbers game thing here. As a Christian, there's some things that you do. Okay? I'm just saying communion is one of them. But one of the things that you do, and I use this, I know this might confuse some people, I call Sabbath go to church. Okay? I say that. You don't have to have a rewarding Sabbath. But I call it go to church. Because maybe I'm getting old. If you don't, then you're not very committed. I said that wrong to the camera. You're committed, but go ahead. So, of course, that's why we're going to look at this. Yeah, it's said more than just going to church. Yeah, it is. But so when I say that, here's the danger. When I say go to church, somebody, and I know this guy here, I'm pointing, he's going to say it's more than that. Of course, yeah, it is. But do I take from it? Do I take anything from the Sabbath when I reference it? If I'm in a group of people and at a workplace, not here, but people that don't know me, and I say, yeah, I believe in going to church. Isn't that the same thing as saying I believe in the Sabbath? Now back to this unbeliever here. And some people will say, well, you're really not pouring your heart out? No, he didn't say that. I'm saying that. If I'm in a group of people that don't know if I'm a Christian or not, but here in America, everybody knows what a Christian is. And anymore, you're understanding more about other Eastern religions and what people do. I am, just as time goes by. But other Christians would say, oh, so, yeah. And I said, well, I go to church on Saturday. I feel that's a mouthful. You're saying I'm just barely scratching the surface? Oh, don't feel picked on. Talk. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. He said keep the whole day. It said more than just going to church a couple hours. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, Bible Belt. Yes. Oh, you didn't finish. Okay. Go. Yes. A full day, yes. So what's being said, just for the online visitors, as time's gone by, people that go to church on Sunday, they tend to they're tend to just check in on morning services. But in the Bible Belt South, you'll still see the ones that come in the morning will come back in the afternoon, which was sad. So, but yeah, I think things have changed, and here's some thoughts. Well, I know in the lesson, I hope I'm not shorting you, because they're talking about the covenant of the Moses people, and Moses and the Israelites, but they do talk about the Sabbath here, and about God sanctifying us through the Sabbath. That was mentioned in here. And it also talked one day about, I'm paraphrasing best, is that there's certain knowledge that can be gained by honoring the Sabbath. I feel that's in church, again, but it might not be. Okay. Well, what's being said, again, for the online, not molding or putting you, is that you need to have a relationship with God to honor the Sabbath. But at the same time, what's been said is some people just go to church because I use the words, I use the words that you should go to church. The thing is I do understand sometimes people just go to church and don't even know God. I get it. But to honor the Sabbath, you really should know God because he wants you to do something. So I get it. There's both sides. Now, the thing, though, is I use the word go to church, and I'm up front, and I know that when I use those words, it's very generic. And it's not what Elaine just said, is that if you know God, you should know what he wants you to do once a week. When I use the words, I go to church, and I use that in a group of people at workplace, it may not convey what Elaine just said of what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. I might look like what Alvin said. I'm just going through the motions. But yet, I use that term up front because I'm going to say, I do believe that you can have a Sabbath without coming to church. Okay, I believe that. Of course! They didn't have churches in Abraham's time. Okay? They didn't have a church when the creation, with Adam and Eve. I get it. But, and I'm not one person to stand up here and beat on my own religion, but I've said this before. I got older, and I see it now. I call it a card-carrying Seventh-day Adventist. That's like a Republican or Democrat. It's you got in your wallet. Nobody has those, but it's a card-carrying. Well, look, I go to church on Sabbath, or I'm Saturday. I go to church on Saturday, so I must have a meaningful relationship with God, because that's a whole lot more than a lot of people. It's a little different, and but most of the time, though, what Elaine just mentioned, I'm not pointing to point, but what Elaine mentioned, it does count for a lot, because I can't just jump around here real quick, but it does count for a lot, because they asked a question in here. Long Lane's, right here. This is good. On Thursday, the pink box is where the question thing is, okay? And there's a lot here. This is good. By keeping his Sabbath holy, we are to show that we are his people. This is from Ellen White, Selected Messages. His word declares the Sabbath to be a sign by which to distinguish the commandment-keeping people. Those who keep the law of God will be one with him in the great controversy commenced in heaven between Satan and God. Now, one thing to be fair, anytime they quote Ellen White, they go right to the meat. And it sounds like I'm going to use the word harp, because let me come back around. Looks like she's harping on something. But, if we had time and we could read a page before or a page after, she's probably just talking about good living and happiness and everything, but eventually you got to speak your mind in 2 or 3 sentences, but yet we don't see that. But, it seems like real strong words, but if you had time to look a page before and a page after, this is just some thoughts here. And this is fair, okay? But this is what the author of this lesson says. Look at this statement from the Lord's servant. They call Ellen White Lord's servant. What is it about the Sabbath that makes it something that can distinguish us as the commandment-keeping people, perhaps more so than any of the other commandments? Now, I'm not stretching too much, but Elaine had mentioned that, keeping a Sabbath would be somebody that really wants to have a relationship with God, or there's a relationship there that you try to do something meaningful. What they're saying here is, the question is here, what is it about the Sabbath that makes it something that can distinguish us as the commandment-keeping people, perhaps more so than any of the other commandments? Now, this question is a little different, because I'm not asking if you see somebody keeping Sabbath that you could see they have a meaningful relationship with God. I'm not asking that. What's being asked here is, why is that more distinguishing than all the commandments?
Because it's a blessing that God gave us to be with him on the Sabbath. He's there. His blessings empower us to sanctify us. And it gives us a blessing.
Okay. It's being said it's a blessing to keep it. Okay. Back.
I think a lot of the other commandments and hidden, you can hide these lives, hide the critical, hide the Sabbath kind of public reality.
Yes. You can't. In the other commandments, you could hide if you lie, you could hide if you steal, but you can't hide the fact that you keep the Sabbath. Okay. Now, it's not fair for me to say, well, I can see you go to church, when we just already covered the fact there's people keeping the Sabbath that don't go to church. They don't go to a building, per se. But you would know them in a community, because down at Hot Springs, Lane used to live, on the way into town, there was a guy that was a welding shop. Do not work on Saturday. Okay? I think his grandson. So I always wondered if he said, and he wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist. And I always wondered if he worked on Sunday, or if that was his way of saying, I'm not working any day. But I talked to somebody, and they said that no, he was impressed that no, you don't work on Saturday. And so right here.
Well, one thing about the Sabbath commandment.
Yes.
There's the other one. It's really easy to rationalize you're not sure,
Okay.
Everybody can have their Sabbath. The Sabbath is something that we have to do. Look at it, it's really not a whole lot of rationalization. That's why that is. And so, just to say, I don't feel God is my God, Lord God is holy, God is my God. Those are easy to fit into your life. Now, those are the names where the Christian, so you really stand out.
Okay, so all the commandments, you can do a lot of them right and fit them into your lifestyle, but Sabbath takes an effort. I go back to the numbers game, though, and I'm not making that up, because that was in the very first on Saturday. It comes around weekly. So I hope you know I'm not the one hammering on the numbers game there, and I'm not trying to say that to see that it's tough or rough, but
You read all the commandments. What do they say? Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. But when you get to the
oh
commandment,
yes,
what's it say?
remember. And that was
And that's very important.
Thursday's lesson. Remember. Yeah, remember. Um, yeah, on Thursday's lesson, I'm jumping around, people. And if there's something in this lesson that I'm not, a question being asked, then say something. Something was right there.
I think that SFKS, these Saturday, we're doing it because in Genesis 2 it says, verse 1, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work and he finished. He rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. He blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which he, God, made. It's very clear that the seventh day is the Sabbath. In the Ten Commandments, it simply calls us the Sabbath.
Mhm.
So when I talked to leaders in the public sector, and everybody was talking about going to church on Sunday, they all assumed I would go on Saturday, and they would think, why do you go on Saturday? And I would say, I'm following
Oh, okay. What's said? Yeah, she's saying working in the public sector, like I was talking about. I would tell people, yeah, I go to church on Saturday. What you're saying is you're telling people the same thing, and it's because of the creation story. And she just read that from Genesis 2. And yeah, and yes, yeah, I see. Yeah, from the get-go, not a commandment thing.
right.
Okay.
See, a lot of people let other people tell them which day to do it. We have
Hmm.
chosen to let the Bible decide which day is Sabbath.
Yes. Well, here's a okay. I'm just yeah, yes. Yeah. No, but the thing is, as a numbers thing, and I've done a lot of math. I feel that as a people that and this has been argument, a lot of times that that could the days changed and the days were added, and I tend to think that has it been a constant 7 routine since God rested? I feel that it never did, even though you're saying that none of the days are written. But one thing, I'll go even further, though. Okay? I'm saying that if you were wrecked, this is one of those little what ifs. When I was young, there was a young kid, we were in 4th grade. He'd always do, what if? What would you do, what if? Okay, so this is my what if story. So you're wrecked on an island somewhere, and you're on the beach, and you wake up, and you don't know if you've been there for 2 days. When do you start doing the Sabbath? Well, you thought it was Tuesday, you thought it was Wednesday. Now, you think that my what if story here is just a cutesy little thing. Well, it's not a cutesy little thing. It doesn't end there. I'm just saying is that once you mark your calendar on that tree, the challenge just started. And why? Answer my question. Why? I'm asking you, why did the challenge start? Once you decide back to this 7-day thing, where's the challenge? I'll ask him because he knows me. Where's the challenge now? But where's the challenge? Well, I'll pick the day. Well, I said, we just hammered it up on the coconut tree. I picked that. Where's the challenge start? The challenge starts the same people that are going to church on Sunday. Same thing. It's that someday that there's going to be something going on and I can't make church. It's like, well, no, whoa, you got to go to church. That's what I'm saying on that desert island that I'm wrecked on. If I come up with the calendar, the challenge starts. God's asking you, oh, you think this is Dangerville? No, God's asking you to keep a day. And I believe that it's Saturday. I do. That's the one I'm doing, okay? And I'm not going to get the calendars out and prove that. I'm saying, though, is the biggest, I really feel that today for us, the biggest challenge for us is the inconvenience. Now, I know that in the rest of this lesson, they said that Saturday counts. And I tend to think that Saturday counts because the Jewish people are doing Saturday, and that's where it all came from. Okay? But what I'm getting at is on that desert island is that when you get your calendar up because you had amnesia or whatever it came to, your challenge is, what are you going to do? And that's a lot to be said today. What's that Sabbath going to be like? The one you go with. And I think that that's, you might disagree today, but I'm going to say that's 80% of this whole deal. Once you have this Sabbath, and what's it going to be? Was it going to be meaningful? I think there's 80% of that. However, there's 20% of it that it marks you different from the rest of everybody. I get it. But at the same time is that I'll listen. Maybe people get both of it right. My Sabbaths are going to be meaningful. And people can look over and see that I'm an end-time church. All right, so you get both bonuses. But the lesson here didn't just speak about the bonus of being an end-time church because you go to church on Saturday. They also talked about, can something good come from it? So, all right. I know they talked about covenant. I know they talked about end time. And this lesson wasn't all about, positive Sabbath days. I know it was about being somebody, about being marked. But they did have questions in here. They did have questions in here, so I'm not just making them up. On Sunday at the bottom, along the lines that I'm talking about, if someone were to ask you, how has keeping the Sabbath benefited your relationship with the Lord, how would you respond? Okay, that was a fair question that I didn't make up. I know it's not talking about covenant or end time, but it's here. I try to be fair to this lesson, so I have one right beside you. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate the Sabbath because I have a relationship with my Father. I have 24 hours that I can spend studying the Bible, studying the Spirit of prophecy, developing my Christian life. That's how it helps me. Also, we are going through this pandemic.
Okay.
I see you're not wearing masks here.
We were a little bit ago, and the whole thing is, yeah. But anyway, I'm just saying some did, some doesn't, and things are moving ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Southern Adventist University in Collegedale, Tennessee.
Okay.
We canceled our church service for a while.
Okay.
And I really miss attending with the saints. Hebrews 11:25 says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. So I appreciate live people, worshiping with God's people. That's something that helps to develop my relationship with the Father.
Okay. And what if the online people here? You've seen it where people, because of the pandemic, it shut down, and there was a loss of being with people. You called them saints. You came to the wrong place here. But anyway.
We did our church service, our Sabbath school on Zoom, and
Yes?
I don't like Zoom anymore. I like being with
Okay.
you. And I think that helps us look forward to the day when we will be in heaven and be actually with God himself.
Instead of on Zoom? Yeah, Zoom. Yeah, I know, that's a corny joke. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot of Zoom going on. I hope you know our online thing, we actually started that. Robert's doing that before we even did pandemic. And then it actually kind of helped. It helped. So Robert's the genius behind that. And today, I've only done this. This is my third time up front, so actually he asked me to repeat to help. So anyway, for anybody that knows, I'm just trying to help out. But what was being said is that coming together, Yeah, a lot of positive things. Now, if I use the word go to church, okay, well, people think you take from it. But here's a go to church Sabbath thing, all right? This lesson was talking about positive stuff on the Sabbath. And what was mentioned, you meet people and you get their opinions. And you're going to meet people you don't like their opinions. And they're not going to like your opinions. But in the end, you try to, you might learn something, okay? Here's a Sabbath thing. You know, if I hadn't gone to church, this man told me this one time, okay? And it's a hard go. Everybody has a hard go figuring out what to do on Sabbath, okay? Because you're always weighing it. If you live alone, you got no family, you got four walls, then I hope you have a good Sabbath. No, I'm not. I'm sure you can. But I went to church. I taught a Sabbath school lesson. It might have been this one. This one is about all the positive things, and it's not harping on anything negative. But I went to church, I taught a Sabbath school lesson, and it was brought up, and it's spring. So imagine all these years, this has probably been 15, 16 years ago. But it was brought up about attending some graduations on Sabbath. You know me? I never did. Okay? But there was another man in that set. And this is positive thought. In fact, I won't give anybody any time here to talk about any negativity because this is positive. Okay? This is somebody's thoughts on what they do on Sabbath. Okay? And this person said, and some people said, well, no, they tend to decide that it could be, even though a graduation isn't commercialized, it's just thoughts that, you know, can that turn into something that would be just like another day? And maybe they wouldn't prefer to do that because that just seems like once you're part of that, it's just another day. And so what are you going to do on Sabbath or church day that would be different? Well, this man, who was probably in his 60s by then, he said, wait a second. He grew up in Chicago. He said, my grandkids, he says, I think it's a beautiful thing that they learn to read and write and that they are actually getting a diploma. And somebody says, you are an intelligent person and you've achieved this. And he said, I don't have a problem hugging my grandkids because somebody honored them because they learned to read and write. All right, I thought about it. All right, I see what he's saying. He said, they didn't achieve something else. Now, I'm adding words to it, like win a car. We're going to go celebrate you winning a car. Somebody's honoring my grandkid because he can read and write. So, okay, through a different... Now, I'm not saying that you're going to do anything different because I told you this story. I'm just telling you that I went to church and I learned something from somebody and I never thought of it that way. Never, ever even occurred to me. Never. I figured that reading and write, you fall off the back of a pickup and you learn to do that. Somebody's going to have a, if they're going to, what's that? He was saying it's a milestone. So that's important. Now, he said, what he's trying to say is, I necessarily wouldn't like to pick the days or whatever, but he said that's just so happened that that's the day they're getting their award. All right, so I'm not sitting here trying to tell you what to do on Sabbath. I'm just saying, back to this man here, if I hadn't gone to church, I wouldn't have heard somebody say something like that. Never would have. That doesn't mean that I'm going to mold my lifestyle around the next person. I'm not going to do that. But if I hadn't gone to church, I wouldn't have heard somebody say what really matters in life. So, now, given what, we're still on the same question here. If someone were to ask you, how has keeping the Sabbath benefited your relationship with the Lord, how would you respond? I mentioned that I learned something from somebody. That's what I said. One comment was here, the pandemic kind of shut things down. It's nice to be around the saints, what you said. Any other comments? This question here. Is there anything positive that you've seen from the Sabbath? Something. Oh, don't leave me all alone here. There's right here. Yep. Okay. 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 Yep.
Whereas most of my friends were until I was 7. At the end of 3 years, I was the very first one in the culture to graduate. And they all said, you got more from your Sabbath than you did from your Sabbath. So,
Okay.
how did I get blessed? I got my doctorate a year before anyone.
But-
It was like God gave me a year of time that I didn't have. And the only difference is I did not study Friday noontime,
Oh, okay.
Sabbath night.
All right. So you were part of this program for the camera, part of a program for schooling, and you made an effort to shut down studying, and a couple years there, and then in the end, you got out of that program sooner than a lot of people because okay. Everybody, back to, I'm answering this question you guys should be answering. But if there's come up that a person should shut down, I mean, I'm not trying to steer what you said, but sometimes if you take some time off, you're a better person for it when you come back on the clock. Yeah. Now, everybody's afraid of that one because they're afraid that somebody's going to take a nap on Sabbath. Oh, that one. But anyway, backing up from that, if you clock out and clock back in, you're a better person. You know, in that creation story, it says God rested. Okay? And I do think it's wrong, even though I'm that guy that I told you earlier that you guys come walking in that I tell people to sit up in these chairs, which I wouldn't. I wouldn't make any friends. But I wouldn't make any friends with this statement either. This is my harsh statement, is that, and I've probably done this myself, but you're just going to work day and night up till Friday. you walk in here. That ain't right. You wouldn't do that to your employer, would you? I mean, if you were working for somebody, you're operating heavy machinery, and you're operating this big machine, and they show up in the morning, and they're climbing on it. Where you been last night? My second job. It's like you kill somebody, okay? But I mean, that's not fair to God that's a side note, okay? In the normal scheme of things, most people get sleep and they take a day off. God said do it on Saturday. You were talking about your school curriculum, okay? We're still on this. We got a few minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep looking there to there. Okay. Yes. So again, for the camera, when you rest, you're restored. Okay. Again, I'm beating this a little bit. It's always a touchy subject. You know how much essentially rest you're going to get on Saturday. And me, I think as all adults here, we'll figure that out. Okay. Most people do. I'm not going to preach that to anybody, but I too know you don't want to hurt your employer. But, yeah.
I think, part of rest is just physical, there's also mental and spiritual, that you don't fuss about things in the world 7 days a week, that set that aside and visit yourself, not fuss about the things in the world that spend time quiet, relaxing, quiet. Too often we may go through actions. Most of us put this out, but the mind is thinking about the world and what I got to do on Sunday, what I got to do on this day, what's going on. And the rest, true rest, is that is God. And that's say we get rest.
Okay, again, putting off your stress and worries. Yeah, rather than just trying to being sleep deprived. No, just like, yeah, I'm getting sleep, but I don't want to worry about that stuff. Yeah, on Saturday. Any other comments? I'm not moving along. This is going to come to an end here in about 5 minutes. Here. Just any more, I use the reference of going to church, okay, which I know that, again, some of you coming in, is that a Sabbath is more than just going to church, okay? But we did touch on some facts that you learn. You go to church and you learn some good things. If you are able to have a Sabbath and go to church, I would be the first person up in front to recommend it, okay? That's the starting place. I'd recommend that. And any more in the society we live in, it's very different. There's not a lot of people that go to church and they don't even really understand the Sabbath. But if they want to talk, yeah, you can talk about it. Like this lesson talks about it. But just on the surface, I said scratching the surface here, when I'm talking to some people that don't even begin to understand, I say go to church. Because at least they can wrap their mind around that. Now, why I say it's a different world we live in. And I was watching a show from the 1970s. It was a comedy. It was about a psychologist. And he ended up meeting the pastor of this church. And this pastor of this church said, "Hey, I'd like to come talk to you." And the psychologist says, "Don't you have your partners to talk to? You don't really need to talk to me." That was a comedy. Well, it turns out that this pastor at this church, which was very, you don't see comedies today talk about people going to church. In fact, I don't even watch the new stuff. You can see why I'm watching the old stuff. But today, nobody could write that script. Do you understand? Nobody's going to put that into a script for a movie or a comedy about what exactly church is, because those writers, I don't think they even know. But this is in the 1970s. And they wrote about this pastor, and it was kind of unique because this pastor didn't know if he was really suited for being a pastor. There's other things said. But one thing he did mention, he said, all the football games, they're on Sunday. I wish they went to church on Saturday. Okay? Now, I was like, well, maybe that's a plus for me. I don't watch football. But what I'm saying is, this was not about what you do on Sabbath or Saturday. What I'm saying is today in America, there are so many people so far removed from what Sabbath is that at best you might be able to reach them if you say, I choose to go to church once a week. And it matters. So, well, I tell you what, I'm going to say a prayer. I didn't start with prayer, but it's time for me to finish. So if you bow your heads, dear Jesus, thank you for our lesson study. And we're going to have church today and go with us through that. And thank you for everything you do for us. Amen.